When Canada left for the World Cup this past month, there was always a question on just where exactly the mentality of this club would be. Injuries to Janine Becky and other contributors have really kind of made an impact on this club. They're going to be without Desi Scott, some veteran presences, and relying on a young striker in Jordan Huitema. It was always kind of a question on where this club is right now. That's what we're going to get into in today's Talkin' Soccer World Cup Daily. Of course, I've posted some recaps over on the Substack, which will be linked down below, and just kind of looking into where the panic meter is right now for this Canadian national team. Of course, they would be the first ones to tell you that there are no excuses, that this is a talented club, a talented squad, I should say, that can still compete even with those absences and with all the questions around this team. Obviously, it's hard when you're openly fighting with your federation to come into a World Cup with no baggage. But as we've seen with the US in the past, it is possible to succeed in spite of the people in charge of your federation. Now, that being said, there is a big red flag with this squad and how they performed in last night's match against Nigeria. Before we get into kind of what went wrong with Canada, let's talk about Nigeria, because this is a vastly improved Nigerian squad. I actually saw them play the U.S. in Kansas City last summer, where they lost 4-0 before losing 2-0, playing Canada, losing 2-0, and then drawing 0-0, much like they did in this match. So this is a Nigerian squad that is improving over time, that is getting better, that is getting more comfortable. And you saw that in this matchup. This was a well-oiled Nigerian squad, and obviously the talent difference is still there, but they were structured in their defensive stability. They were able to keep their low block. They were able to keep their spacing tight. So as Canada builds up throughout this match, they weren't able to disorganize that tight block because everything was just too slow before it was switched side to side or before they found those diagonal passes. Nigeria did a great job just congesting everything in the middle of the pitch, which leads us to kind of the questions around this Canada club, because Christine Sinclair is 40 years old. She is beyond the prime age of the Christine Sinclair that we know, which is one of the best football players, soccer players in the world. That's not where she is right now. She is an aging footballer that has aged gracefully. She's still a very effective player, as you see from her performances with the Portland Thorns this year. But she has to be shielded a little bit more. She cannot take on the brunt of those progressive passes, the brunt of just how their offense sets up, how their attack sets up. She is not the player that she used to be. If you look at the progressive passing matrix from last night's match, you'll notice that Christine Sinclair was isolated and wasn't able to really generate much to Huitema, out to the outside. That compact nature of Nigeria's defensive setup really isolated Christine Sinclair as she was playing as that lone center attacking midfielder. If you look at how she plays for the Thorns, she's kind of shielded by Sam Coffey. She's kind of shielded by Crystal Dunn in that midfield three, in that she has two very reliable defensive midfielders around her and a much more dynamic Sophia Smith in front of her. What Beth Priestman now has to realize is that Sinclair isn't as mobile as she used to be, and she can still be effective, but she needs to be shielded a bit more in the midfield. She cannot be isolated in the attack like she was against Nigeria in this opening matchup. And you can see with the substitutions made towards the end of this match, Sophia Smith was subbed on for Sinclair, and Canada was more effective from that point. And I think it just tells you of not only is it the personnel in this formation, but there must be some adjustments with how they play going forward. Now, Sinclair's minutes probably need to be adjusted as well. She played 70 minutes in this game. She rarely goes 90. She's been coming off the bench a time for Portland. So it's not a given that she starts every match of this tournament. But it stinks saying this about a player who has been so good for so long. She does need to be shielded a bit. And it leads to questions of Canada as well. And while this was a 0-0 draw, while Caitlin Sheridan is still a fantastic keeper and Nigeria were really never able to make her work too hard, there were some chances for Nigeria, and they were solely made by baiting Canada in and countering with numbers forward, and their speed was just hard for Canada to put up with at times. Now, the real MVP of this match was not in any outfield players necessarily. It was in the Nigerian goalkeeper and just her ability to make some, not just great saves in general, but to be able to make a double save on a penalty kick. It's kind of wild to watch a player that has been somewhat misjudged heading into this tournament. She plays for Paris FC, which is not, the high pedigree Ligue 1 team. Of course, Paris FC has a little bit higher of a stature in women's football than does men's football, but Nduzi is probably looking at moving up after this tournament if she can build off of this performance from the first match day. Canada put 16 attempts on net. Only 3 of those were able to break through to Ndozi, and Ndozi made a fantastic penalty save that is the early front runner for save of the tournament. And that's kind of the real difference maker in this one. Sinclair, it was a decent enough taken penalty. It wasn't a bad penalty from Sinclair, but it was a great save. And you could kind of feel the nerves and the anticipation leading up to this. It was a good performance from Nigeria. You have to give them all of the credit in the world, but let me know down in the comments, where is your panic level for this Canada club? Because this was not an ideal performance. They now have to do a better job at breaking down a low block. They'll face a similar style of setup in Ireland before having a must-win game if they want to win this group against Australia for the final match of this group stage. That match could also be the return of Sam Kerr, depending on what we hear about her injury. It's interesting. It's interesting when you have these kind of matches early in this tournament that make you kind of reevaluate where you had teams before the tournament started. The other real question mark heading into this tournament was with where Spain was going to be. Of course, Spain also having issues with their federation, but La Roja seems to have put that beside them, and they came ready to play against Costa Rica last night. They kept Costa Rica to 0.07 expected goals to their 5.7 expected goals. And when you look at this kind of XG chart, Costa Rica's first chances coming early in the match within the first 10 minutes, and after that they generated nothing, no expected goals at all, which means that Spain just really dominated both halves of this match. Goals from Esther Gonzalez, Atana Bonmati, and Valerie Del Campo really put this match to bed, but Spain actually underperformed from the goal scoring aspect of this match. So a real dominant display for Spain, a similarly dominant display for Switzerland against the Philippines. But that Philippine squad had a lot of fight in them. They had a goal called back for offsides. And, eventually Ramona Bachmann scores a PK. She finally breaks through. Serena Pubel scores a second goal in kind of the 62nd minute to close it out. But Philippines held it strong. And weird things happen at the World Cup. So it's not necessarily about how dominant of a win you can have. You want to get that win. You want to move on, especially when you're a favorite, and you don't want to be left chasing points later in the group stage. So some good performances from a couple of heavy hitters last night, but there's still some questions around Canada, and Group B is going to be very interesting. Of course, tonight, match day 3 will be underway. We have the USA making their attempt at the 5th star on their crest tonight as they take on Vietnam. Should be a relatively straightforward match, but it'll be nice to see, what this lineup ends up looking like. So I think there's questions around what the rotation and attack looks like, especially at striker, where Alex Morgan is kind of your only out-and-out striker. Of course, Sophia Smith, of course, Trinity Rodman, they can both play that position. Alyssa Thompson can even play that position, but they're used more by Vlatko as wingers. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And Sophia Smith has been on an absolute tear in the NWSL this year. So it's going to be a little bit scary to see what she can do against this Vietnam club. So anyway, let me know what match you're looking forward to as we head into match day 3. And like I said earlier, let me know where your panic meter is for Canada right now, and if you think they can bounce back and put this match against Nigeria behind them. Thank you so much for tuning in to Talkin' Soccer. If this is your first time finding my videos, give me a thumbs up. I'm putting out daily videos throughout the World Cup, so make sure you turn on those notifications. I'll also have some other soccer topics coming up. St. Louis City acquired a player today that I'll have a video on later. But for now, folks, we'll talk real soon.